Most people are looking to find their other half, their soulmate. This, ironically, is a very Jewish concept, the idea of beshert. But of course, it's easier said than done. Our guest today brings a new solution to this issue for the Messianic Jewish community. Today, we'll take a closer look at Messianic Jewish matchmaking. Messiah Podcast is brought to you by First Fruits of Zion, reconciling disciples with God's prophetic promises to Israel.
Put your hand in mine together. We will walk in harmony. Let me introduce you to my teacher, the rabbi from the Galilee.
Welcome back, friends, to Season 3 of Messiah Podcast, where Jesus is Jewish, and that changes everything. You know, I've been thinking, I'd really love to connect more with our listeners and hear how Jesus being Jewish has changed everything for you. Jacob, wouldn't you like to hear some of those stories?
I love stories. Yeah. I mean, it is life-changing. And for those, maybe you're listening to the podcast and you haven't, you're not on the train yet and you haven't figured out that Jesus being Jewish changed everything. But let me tell you, it's like a whole new world opens. Like the Bible finally makes sense, and it just becomes so much more like real and tangible. And we would love to hear from anyone out there who's just who had their mind blown by finally seeing the Jewish Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. If you're listening and you're learning about how Yeshua, about how Jesus in his original Jewish context has changed everything for you, we'd love to hear from you. You can email us at podcast@ffoz.org and tell us your stories. And we're going to read some of them out on future episodes of the podcast. Can't wait to hear from you guys. Jacob.
Hineni.
Well, we haven't been working together that long, but I do remember meeting you about 11 or so years ago. Do you remember that at a Messianic Young Adults Conference?
Yeah. So it was called Kibetza Esrim, which I think is Hebrew for let's get all the 20-somethings together. This was
it's exactly
this is probably actually relevant to the topic today because we're talking about Messianic Jewish matchmaking. It was odd for me because I'm not Jewish.
Oh, right. Okay.
So I felt a little bit out of place. Like the icebreaker stuff that they were doing is like, what's your favorite, do you prefer matzo ball soup this way or that way? And I'm like, I never know what the heck these people are talking about. So definitely a fish out of water, but I do remember that. Yeah.
All right, great. But I remember your wife was with you, wasn't she?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, I mean, obviously, because we're still so young.
Uh-huh.
Did you get married in middle school or something? Like, what happened?
No.
What went down?
So how did I graduated from college with a bachelor's degree when I was 20.
Okay. Gotcha.
So I was a little bit of when it came to like the schedule of my life, I was a little bit of an early bloomer.
Mm-hmm.
So after I graduated from college, I spent a couple of months in Japan helping a little church plant out there. And then I came back and I didn't really know what to do with myself. So I just started working at like a YMCA camp.
Okay. Fair.
And I think I was 23 and my boss was like, hey, my cousin doesn't eat pork either. And she's coming to here to the camp to train you how to better serve your constituency. The fifth graders that come to learn about nature and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow, I didn't know there were other people out there that were trying to do some Leviticus. And,
wow.
And so, we met and we sort of hit it off and we were married within the year.
Wow. Okay.
And within the next year, we had a little tiny baby.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, I had like the opposite experience before I got married. I was like single for 100 years. And then I just got married in 2021, actually.
Oh, congratulations.
But it wasn't for a lack of, thank you. It wasn't for a lack of trying. I definitely could have used some help from our guest who we are going to be interviewing. But by that point, I mean, I was 29 and I couldn't believe that that's where I was, and I remember thinking back to the Chabad I used to go to in college and their the Rebbitzin telling me, yeah, so when you turn 18, your friends and your family, they basically just have a list for you of eligible matches, people that they think you'd be interested in meeting and might be a good match for you. And I thought, man, I wish we did that in the Messianic Jewish world. Mm-hmm. And apparently we do.
Nice.
So without further ado, our guest today is Rabbi Aaron Allsbrook. He and his wife, Brooke, are the founders and directors of the Messianic Matchmaker.
It's an idea whose time it's been a long time coming. There's been Messianic Judaism like in its current form since the 60s.
Right.
And it's just by blind luck, it's still here. Now we're finally going to have like a system to this thing.
Absolutely. All right. He's going to tell us all about it after the break.
I was homeschooled, so I have a high school reunion.
Oh, there you go. Maybe don't
every day.
Maybe don't go to that one. Okay.
With myself.
I love it.
If you want to know the Jewish Jesus, don't miss out on a free subscription to Messiah Magazine, where you'll discover his life and teaching, learn about the biblical festivals, and get connected with Israel. Subscribe for free at messiahmagazine.org. Messiah Magazine is a free, donation-supported quarterly publication of First Fruits of Zion.
Well, I am delighted to introduce our guest this week on Messiah Podcast, Rabbi Aaron Allsbrook from Ohev Israel in Virginia. First of all, welcome. It's really great to have you here. And I'm so glad someone's finally doing something about this issue. Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Well, as you said, my name is Rabbi Aaron Allsbrook. I'm the senior leader at Ohev Israel in Springfield, Virginia. I've been here for about 5 years. I have a wonderful wife. Been married for almost 11 years. And we have 4 little ones, currently not in the house, making this podcast thus possible.
I understand. Yes,
you do. And we were set up by somebody, like I said, well, it would have been almost 13 years ago we were set up. And obviously a huge blessing because frankly, for me, it was, I traveled all throughout the States, even in Israel. I'm like, I couldn't find the right person. And it took someone to say, hey, he met my wife and now my wife. And he said, I think you should meet somebody. And so we met, and he was right. And then I found out after we got engaged, and he said, well, we were set up too. So after, this was a few years ago, watching Stiesel on Netflix and the character Königsberg, I thought, why can't we do this? It's a Jewish practice going back millennia. Mm-hmm. Right. Why are we the only ones not doing it?
Exactly.
And so I thought, let's get this off the ground. And I had a friend at the congregation help us, because I wanted to make sure it was official and go through all the legal channels, and it got it off the ground. And here we are. And actually, we have somebody who just got engaged, whom we put together. They got engaged a few days ago. So very exciting. Yeah,
that's great.
Very, very exciting.
Big mazel tov to that couple.
Matchmaker, matchmaker, make me a match. Find me a find, catch me a catch.
So tell our listeners, we have listeners from all kinds of different backgrounds. Tell us a little bit about just the basics of this. What is a matchmaker? What do you do? Why is it important?
The visionary philosophy behind it is that people match people, not algorithms. And people know people, and the fact at the end of the day is a relationship is people. And so we want to use people to make matches of people. The original vision was to provide a place for Jewish people and believers in Yeshua to find someone just like them, another Jewish person who believes in Yeshua. Mm-hmm. For me, it was very important and was difficult. And even for my wife, when she first became a believer, her grandparents said to her, "You'll never find another Jewish man who believes like you." Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they were, thank God, they were actually at our wedding. And they got to see it in front of their eyes. And it was very special because I know for many people, I believe it's on their heart to find such a person, but it's just challenging. And so then sometimes they give up hope or they don't know what to do and they go on websites and it's just difficult. So we wanted to find a place where people sign up with us. They fill out a brief profile so we can get to, kind of have a template or a platform on which we can have a conversation. Mm-hmm. We get to know them. It's a conversation. It's just like you're talking, it's like, hey, tell me a little about yourself. What do you like? What do you not like? Tell me about your background. Tell me about what you're looking for. We get a picture. And then we just look around with the other people we have. It's like, I think they could be a good match. And then we say, would you like to meet so-and-so? And so-and-so says, yes, I would. And then we go to the other person. Would you like to meet this person? Okay. And then we make an introduction.
Right.
And they get to meet. We have people from all over Europe, Israel, South America, or Central America, and all throughout the States. And so admittedly, it'd be nice if we had a lot of people in, one state, a lot of people in another state, but sometimes it's just, you're meeting somebody who's crossed different states. But if it weren't for us, you wouldn't have met them.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
So we provide a bridge. If, some people said, I don't want to do long distance. Like, okay, well, I understand. Yeah.
buy a plane ticket and
that's right.
I did.
That's right. Exactly. I moved when I met my wife. I was not living in the same state. And then I said, I want to be with you. So I moved into this tiny apartment in New York and did the whole New York thing where I worked multiple jobs just so I improve myself. And,
That's commitment.
living in an apartment that was about the size of my bedroom now.
Oh, no.
But I did it.
kicking rats on a subway.
Literally changing my clothes in my car as I went to different jobs.
Oh, yeah.
That was, but I did it to get my wife, and I got her.
Right. When my husband and I mean, we met long before, but we were also the result of a shidduch, of a matchmake. And, it was very beginning of COVID. I was living in California. He was living in DC.
Oh my gosh.
And I got on a plane in May 2020 when people were literally wearing hazmat suits. I saw 5 hazmat suits at the airport. I was wearing 2 gloves, 2 masks, hand sanitizer in each pocket, No one knew what was going on.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, we're just going to make this work. And so, yeah, not everything's going to be the most ideal situation. And there's going to need to be some shifting of priorities and maybe even location in order to make something like that work.
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's galut, right? I mean, it's exile. This is the situation.
It is.
The Jewish people are dispersed.
Yeah,
right?
it's absolutely correct, honestly. And if we want any chance of bringing things back together, just got to go out and find each other.
That's right. We want to be that bridge, and we also bridge between networks. So say you have a bunch of singles in one network and then you have other singles in another network, then we're that bridge. And we have the support of all the big networks in the States, which is great. So this has been, and it's interesting as we've been talking about this with a lot of other people, as they said, well, we had this vision too, but we just never did anything about it. Or we wanted to do something about it, but we never got off the ground. Or I tried something small, but again, before we got this thing going, contacted all the big networks. Would you support us? Would you write us something? And would you share with amongst your congregations, the people you know? So that's what makes it really neat. And also there's the fact of Jewish people in churches. And, some of them still have a desire to meet another Jewish follower of Yeshua.
Right.
So that we provide that opportunity for them.
Now, just to clarify a bit, when you say networks, are you talking about the congregational organizations like UMJC, MJAA?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, we have those two, Tikkun, Jews for Jesus, Chosen People. So those 5, and even Jewish Voice.
So ministry circles as well as congregational organizations. And then, of course, there's other Jewish people in churches.
That's right.
Yeah, bridging those gaps is huge, because for people who aren't necessarily familiar with this culture, the UMJC has their conference and MJAA has their conference and Tikkun does their thing where they do their thing. And then the ministries, all sort of are focused on what they're doing. And there's not a lot of intersection between people.
That's right. Yeah. And we wanted to help bridge that.
Oh, I love that. We need more of that, even even without the basis of the matchmaking. If we could do that with even more things, that would be fantastic.
Oh man,
yeah. We need like a friends making.
Friends making, yes.
Just
exactly.
You don't have to get married, but you can just go have coffee with some buddies.
Yeah,
I love that. Well, may this be the beginning of all sorts of connections to be had in the future. I love that. That's good. Okay, well, about the matchmaking itself, this is, obviously you're the first to make it more of an official thing in the Messianic Jewish world. But you're not the first one to have this idea about a shidduch, right? So this is
No.
an ancient word, an ancient concept. Tell us a little bit about what a shidduch is. Maybe many of our listeners are not familiar with the term. Can you explain what it is, how it's used?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. We see it all the way back going to the origins of Israel, to the Jewish people, where Abraham says, I need to get a wife for Isaac. And so he doesn't look amongst the Canaanites where he's living. He tells his servant Eliezer, he says, go home and go find me a wife for my son amongst my people. And he does. And he finds him a wife. And then even Jacob, next generation, is that when he's runs away from his brother who wants to murder him, he goes back home, same place, and he says, okay, I should marry one of my own. This tradition has continued for centuries. It is not. Now there are different seasons, and we're not advocating necessarily for arranged marriages, and still some communities do today. Although I'm sure the practice existed in ancient Jewish world, and some still within today's Jewry. But what we are saying is that essentially there was a profession, a shadchan, who would know the community, know the families, would know the people, and would say, I propose this match. And even in Israel today, if you ever, people going throughout Israel and they're staying in a hotel, and especially some of the bigger hotels, particularly in Jerusalem, you see this, is that these religious couples will be sitting there in the hotel lobbies, and that's where they meet. This. That's their date. Yeah. And they do it in this public place where they can't be tempted or do anything illicit. And they just talk and get to know each other. And so we wanted to do something like that. Like, how can you talk? Obviously, if you're just talking on Zoom or talking on the phone, it's, you just get to know somebody and then you want to meet. And obviously, we would encourage you to have safe, good practices. Like, you should be public space. There's something very good about this.
Stranger danger.
Exactly. So the idea is that somebody is there who knows two people. Right. It's certainly possible you can meet somebody without a matchmaker. But given the way, as you said, Jacob, that we are dispersed, it's difficult. I mean, you even said, listen to the different places that we've already listed on this podcast. I'm originally from California. I moved all over. You've moved. Oh, yeah. Stephanie, like we move. Oh my goodness, and so how do we meet somebody? It's not like, way back when where you stayed in your village for generations and generations. Now so someone's got to help bridge as people go out all over the place. And so, and more than ever, I think that it's really great to have a service where people can go to and say, I'd like to meet somebody. Okay, tell us about yourself and let us get to know you. So that maybe we'll meet somebody who will really be a good match for you, and let us introduce you to them.
So do you just do the match make, or are there like adjunct services? Like, I was a pastor. I did weddings and stuff, and we would do like premarital counseling, and postmarital counseling. Like, I mean, what happens if you match a couple and 3 months later they just despise each other, but they're already married? These sort of visceral realities of human relationships. Do you sort of branch out from the actual match and provide like support?
Yeah, that's a good question. Currently, we don't. We encourage people to go to their congregational leaders. And it's something that we've been figuring it out, frankly, as we go along, is that really people should be talking. We should get a letter of support from a congregational leader for a couple of reasons. One is that they would support this idea, and two, they would advocate. They would say that they're ready. Before my wife and I got married, we would meet with our rabbi and his wife on a weekly basis, and I would do so individually, and get their okay. Go through these rigorous almost tests. When I first moved there, like, okay, who are you? Why do you want to take our spiritual daughter? And so I had to prove myself and, get their blessing. Same with her father.
Yeah.
So with these people is that we really just make the match, and we'd like to be this blessing to people, but running a congregation, having a marriage, 4 kids, our time is limited.
You're just a little busy.
A little bit, yeah.
Just a
Then
little.
there's sleep, and then there's play, all that stuff.
Oh, there's sleep? Wait, when are you getting sleep?
Yeah, there's that. Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, so we try to, if people, we've done it some in the past, but we're now more and more saying, listen, if something comes up, talk with your congregational leader, somebody, an elder, who can guide you through this. But yeah, really just serving as the bridge.
That makes a lot of sense.
It does. And I'm really glad to hear that you're encouraging that sort of reliance on a congregational authority and leadership. Congregations are really important.
Oh, and for sure. I mean, even for ourselves, we wouldn't have got married without congregational support and blessing. And 2, to continue to be married. It's hard.
Yes. Yeah.
And you need a community and older people who've been married a lot longer and know what they're successful to help you go through this, and even friends who are also in the same throes of things. How do you support one another? And with their kids, like sometimes, okay, you come over and bring your kids, and we'll let them run around, and so that we can hang out.
Yeah.
If we didn't have a community, I don't know how people do it, to be honest.
I don't either. Yeah, no program, no organization can really take the place of a community. So I'm glad to hear that you're conjoining those two things.
Become an FFOZ friend today and join First Fruits of Zion in restoring the original faith and message of the Jewish Jesus. Sign up now at ffoz.org/friends. Centuries of misunderstanding about the Torah, the Jewish people, and the Jewishness of the New Testament obscured the real good news message of the kingdom. Today, a prophetic resurgence of faith is breaking out, and FFOZ friends are at the forefront of this restoration. Become a friend today at ffoz.org/friends.
Why aren't we reverting when we consider bringing matchmaking back into the equation?
If people were getting married as much as they wanted to be, we wouldn't be needed. I think the fact there are a lot of single people and people are getting married much later, and I think a lot of the reason is because they just can't find anybody. I mean, you got to ask the question, if the system that you're using isn't working the way you want it to, you need a new system.
Yes.
So we're providing, there are a lot of websites, if they were working that well, then they wouldn't come to us. It's not completely this way, but this is a lot of truth to this. Like how many, it's typically, we have a slight majority of women, although we have a good amount of men.
Sure.
And they're looking for somebody,
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll even put a little guilt trip on the guys, like, guys need to step it up and like,
Amen.
get yourself ready and be a man and go, find that right woman and become, do what it takes to become a good husband. So they're looking for it, and we want to help make that possible. And again, I think it goes back to the fact that people are so spread out. People move for work, even making aliyah. They go there, I'm like, okay, I got to find somebody. We want to make that a reality.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. There's, I think maybe in our culture today, there's, I forget how many dating apps there are, but it's in the hundreds. Okay.
Wow.
Ways, avenues of finding a match, finding a date, so to speak, depending on what your actual desire is there and what your intentions are. But
Yeah.
I remember, when I was single, I did use the apps just to try and meet people, because I don't know, it's hard to meet people, like we were saying, especially as a Messianic Jew. And so you kind of just take what you can get. But my roommate and I think maybe it's a quantity over quality thing now in our culture when it comes to that, because there's so many options now of how to meet people virtually. And my roommate and I actually had like templates ready after every date to like let people down easy, because it was just like you're constantly going over text because you're constantly going out for coffee with these people, and it's like, okay, I got like 3 this weekend to meet these people. Okay, all duds. How do we get past this? So I think you're absolutely right.
Cast that net pretty wide.
Well, you know, when you're 33 and you're just like hanging out and nothing's happening, and you have moved everywhere, and now we're really getting into my own personal history. But the point is, as we're evolving as a society and all these options are available, you don't think we're not reverting by going back to matchmaking, because it really is I think a quality over quantity issue.
Absolutely. I think also the society has sold us not the greatest good, and thinking, oh, you just, free love. And I mean, I guess that works if you're not looking for marriage and not looking for something solid and not looking for a good family and not looking for a solid community. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you want to make Messianic Tinder, yeah, fine. But that's not what we're looking for. We're looking
it definitely isn't.
Good marriage. We're looking for success. We're looking for, what's going to build a solid family, what's going to represent God and be filled with God. This is what's worked. And the community should be looking out for the community. And that's what we're trying to do.
Firmly believe it.
Messianic Judaism is sort of a niche community, but it feels like everybody is finding it sort of hard. Like, I read an article the other day about the decline of the third space, which is, so you have like home, and the people you live with, if you're single, are probably not marriage candidates because they're like, you're related to them. And then there's work, and then there used to be like a bunch of other places that people would go, like the Grange Hall or whatever. Like, there were these third spaces, these community, like whether
events,
it's and like the only ones left are like the church or the synagogue or something like that. And I don't know, I just feel like it's hard for everybody to get out there. Like, where do you go? Like, where are the people? I have no idea where everybody is. Everyone's at home on Zoom or like whatever. Like,
well, especially recently.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the pandemic, I feel like, just made it worse. But
it definitely did.
Like, you get where I'm coming from? Like, I feel like we're all just a little bit more distant from each other. Am I the only one who's feeling this?
No, I completely agree with you, which I think also it purports the importance of a community, and then how this service can bridge people. That is not, we do meet you through Zoom, but it's personal, and then we meet other people, and and you're setting up people for a very important conversation. It's not just, let's go on to Google Meets or whatever it's called, and talk about something at work. But I mean, I guess in a way, even as work is trying to redefine itself and to be more proficient, that we're doing the same. Like, let's meet somebody and talk. And this is not just something casual and goof around like, oh, we've been together for 12 years and now we're going to get married. Like, what were you doing for 12 years? Yeah. You didn't know?
12 years.
Like, now it's like, no, you want to get to know you. Said, could we potentially get married?
Yeah,
exactly.
And that's, I think, is that's one of the nicer things, because I think it's people have also just taken it so casually. I had parts like we knew we wanted to get married, my wife and I, in the first date. There was a lot of things that we had to do to happen. And then once we got married, it was 2 years later, because I moved and I had to establish myself, improve myself. But once we got married, like, okay, let's have kids. Because what else do we need to do? Yeah.
Right.
Like, we waited 6 years to have kids. I'm like, for what? How many shows can you binge watch until you have kids? Like,
that's a very good point.
Thomas says, build a house and plant a vineyard and then find a wife, right? So I mean, there may be some things people need to get sorted.
People were getting married at like 14 then, though. So I mean,
that's also true.
You had a little extra time to plant that vineyard, build a house, all the things. But
I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of, like, a 23-year-old who has no idea how to meet somebody.
Turn back that clock, huh, Jacob?
Yeah. So, like, at that age, I would have just been like terrified, right? So, like, even for like a Zoom thing, maybe like especially for a Zoom thing, it's like, I would be so afraid that I would say something stupid, or like I would. So do you like coach people? Do you like help people like sort of improve themselves and like make a good first impression? Or
that's a great question.
You just like take people out they are?
Yeah, that's a good point. During the interview process, my wife, she's like I said, she's from New York, so she's very forward.
Oh yeah.
and she'll tell people as it is, and I think she'll give people some notes. I think the nice thing is though is that in these conversations you're both in the same boat. It's not like one guy's like, I need to get married, and the other one says, I just want to go on a date. No, you're both in there to get married.
Right.
And so I think there's that comfort. We say a few things to people. We've had some people come to us and, like they said, oh, this person said this to me. And I'm like, well, I don't think it's that big of a deal. And then the further we talk with them, they're like, well, I think there's something else involved. I'm like, okay, well, I understand that. Again, go to your congregational leader. And I think they should be apprised of what's happening. They can help too.
Oh, for sure.
I think there's, like you're saying, Jacob, is that some people they are really socially awkward because our social skills are not what they once used to be.
Yeah.
And it does need a little bit of help. So yeah, I think when we get to know people, we can encourage them how to talk. And
that's good.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
We should have like a YouTube tutorial, like how to have a successful Zoom date.
oh my God.
how to not bomb your first Zoom date.
True. You don't have that, the breathing room of when you go out to a meal. Like, oh, here's dinner. Like, how's your food? Oh, it's just nice. Like, you have no buffer.
No,
it's
right.
just you and me.
Oh, you'd be surprised though. Definitely had some completely silent dinner dates in my past.
Worst.
Oh my goodness.
That's terrifying.
It is terrifying. I heard something the other day on another podcast about how people are getting married later. So the average age, and I'm going to screw up these statistics, but the average age I think used to be 26 or something. And now it's, I think 28 for women and 31 for men or something like that. And then waiting longer to have kids. And apparently somewhere in the pretty high percentages, over 50% of males between certain ages these days are single. And we're just trying to figure out, people are trying to figure out why. So I'm just curious, Rabbi Aaron, if you have an opinion as to why that might be.
I think I was married, it was 31. I was about to turn 31. The next month. But I think going back, Jacob, what you were saying too, that third space is like people don't have the opportunity to meet people as much. And I think there's also this drivenness of like, I got to work and I got to make a lot of money so I can provide. And like, you know what?
Grind set.
My rabbi in New York used to say, God provides, especially, it's different for people, I think, in the kingdom is because God provides grace for the different seasons we're in. We think, oh, if I have it all together, then it'll work. Like, I think first and foremost, yes, you do need to be responsible, but we need to be people of prayer and fasting and seeking mentorship and advice, godly wisdom. It's like, is this something you really should be pursuing? Because, I mean, look, in my 20s, people think the 20s is the best. Like, well, I did travel. I moved to Israel.
Sure.
I went all over the world, and it was great. But almost every night, it was like, I want to have a family. Where's my wife? I want to have kids. I think there's because it's ingrained in before there was sin, there was family.
Oh wow, yeah.
And
that's a good point.
It's part of who we are as people. And at the end, it's Yeshua returns to Jerusalem and brings the family of God together. And like this is what it's about. And I think his work is great and it's fun. But I mean, even as I experience as a congregational leader, my family they're my first disciples. So it has to be the priority. I mean, I would encourage anybody listening, if you get discipled, so that you can be ready for marriage.
So let's get a little slightly more granular here, because I'm sort of interested, because you talk about like people, not algorithms, right? But but that makes me wonder, like, do you have, like a pre-flight checklist or something that you run through, like? Is there like specific stuff that you look for, or is it just sort of like a vibe? Like, I sort of just have like a feeling that these people would be good together.
Oh, when we're trying to match people?
Yeah.
I mean, we have everyone fills out a similar profile, and then we have some questions we ask people as we're doing the interview, and then my wife fills it out, and they fill out some of it too.
Well, you don't want to give away the secret sauce. Like, what are some of the? Right. What do you look for?
It's just ketchup and mayonnaise, right? little pickles in it.
Yeah,
So someone logs on, right? They make a profile on your site. Is that how that works?
They fill out a few questions, and then
So there's not like, it's not like, I don't know, eHarmony where like you can see everybody at one time. Okay, so this is a private.
No one knows nothing.
They make an account and only you and Brooke can see it, and then
So then we set up an interview. They send us a picture of themselves, and then she has some leading questions. Tell me about your journey of faith. Tell me about your Jewishness. Tell me about your vision for life. Tell me about the things you like to do, family, etc. And then as she goes through the interview, she has these questions looking like, oh, tell me more about this, and what's your spiritual life like, and how are you in the congregation, and get real personal.
right.
And she'll, if she needs to tell you like it is, she will. But honestly, when it then comes to when we have the people in front of us, I look at pictures, I go through the interviews, and I think, you know what? Just like you would with somebody else, when you're matching a friend up, you don't think, let me go through this.
Right.
Like, this could be a good couple.
Right. Exactly.
And I say, hey, would you want to meet that person? They said, okay. And then would you want to meet that person? Okay. Once I get an agreement, here's your introductory letter. Here are their phone numbers. We have some rules too for that. Like he needs to make the first move. It needs to happen within a week.
Wow.
We will follow up with you, and then let them go with it. And we stay on top of people. Like, how's it going?
Sure.
Tell us what's happening. So it's honestly, even though we do all this work, a lot of it is still just. I think they could be a nice couple.
Oh yeah.
Because that's, that's when I was. Our friend introduced my wife to me. He was listening to her talk, and all of a sudden he just thought of me. And so it's just like, oh, this could be a good match.
Yeah, exactly.
And
well, there's only so much you can put on paper. Nothing quite replaces, you are looking for an emotional connection with someone, hopefully. So it needs to be based on more than just stats. Well, so is there anything more to the process? Like, what happens if it's just not a match?
They'll tell us, or as we follow up, it's like, hey, how's it going? Well, I realize, that this isn't working out, or we're in different stages of life. Sometimes there is that reality of one guy. We have people who are single and other people who are divorced. Some people have no kids. Some people do have kids. One guy we know, he wants to move to Israel in the next 5 years. Another one says, no, I can't leave the country. So there are these unfortunate realities. Sometimes people are like, well, I connected really well with that person, but we just didn't have that spark.
Yeah.
Like, okay, what can I, I get it. You can have all the things on paper that could look good. But you really do have to have that connection.
And without the magic, so to speak, can people still have a successful relationship and a loving, affectionate relationship?
Absolutely. I mean, think about all these marriages that are out there that maybe they were set up by somebody, even again, maybe possibly against their will, but I think you can still learn to love the person and have a wonderful marriage. I think there's the extreme opposite is, oh, we love each other and all the time. Like, yeah, well, when you're changing diapers and you slept 3 hours and you got to go to work, like, there's not a lot of love in the room.
Nope, there isn't.
It's just you do it because there is that part of God who also says if you make a covenant, you honor it and God will bless it.
Yes.
And you learned, and oftentimes it's just that you need to be healed and transformed and redeemed and sanctified more to make it work. And that happiness is not the ultimate goal of all of life.
Yes, correct.
But that it's that we want to love and lay down our lives for one another and seek the other's benefit and to do so to honor God. I mean, there are a lot of things that go in there that are a lot larger than our own contentment. So I think people can have a great marriage. The more you invest in it, you find that it's more rewarding.
Firmly believe that.
Each of us is stamped with Hashem's image, right? So I've always felt like in some corner of my being that pretty much any two people, if they work on themselves, could make it work. But because like any two people do have to work on themselves. Like I'm not sure I've ever met a couple
for sure.
that was just like, oh, we two puzzle pieces that just fit together seamlessly. It's always like, you talk about people waiting until their 30s to get married, and it's like I felt like I sort of had it together before I got married, and then I got married and realized that I was a child, right? Like I had never grown up, and there's like this whole stage of spiritual development and spiritual growth that's very difficult to access if you never have to go through that process of like figuring out that you're like how to live with somebody, right? Like how it's
exactly.
just how, like you're talking about the self-sacrificial love and like all these hard decisions that you have to make every day to like make life easier for your spouse and like choose them over yourselves. And like,
Yeah, even going back to the whole spark thing, we agree that my wife and I, we had that ability to look into each other and be connected there, so that when we went through all the challenge of being discipled and in our courtship, that we went back and say, you know what, God did something there, and so it's worth working for it.
yeah,
And even if we didn't have that spark, I don't know. This was our case. I'm sure not everybody does have that, but you find God will give you what you need to make it a success. And it's not easy.
No.
I mean, I'll tell you though, after we certainly more than ever, I see now after being almost married 11 years, I love our marriage. We have a great marriage because we work hard.
Sure, of course.
And it's always a work in progress, but it's, where we are now, it's great. We really have a great friendship, within it.
And that's very important.
yeah.
Okay, so you have this program set up, and you're obviously encouraging people to join, and you want to make more matches. What are your goals? What do you hope? I mean, other than just the obvious, you want to get people married. What do you hope is going to be the long-term impact on the Messianic Jewish community as a whole?
Well, I think it was Rabbi Stuart Dowerman who said, you're Jewish because your parents made a choice. And I want to see that. I want to see that there be a next generation of Messianic Jewish people.
Yes.
That, is a continuation of our people as a nation. Also for a testimony to, when Yeshua returns, that they're actually still Messianic Jewish people and not just a concept.
Love that.
To the church world, that this is something legitimate, and
Right.
it's not just an idea. But that this is actually a thriving community.
Amen.
And so that's what I really want to see.
Well, this program has been a long time coming, and as we've said, and I know it will serve as a real blessing to the Messianic Jewish community. So tell us, Rabbi Aaron, who qualifies for your service, and how can they get in touch with you if they're interested?
Yeah. Currently, we are serving those who are born Jewish to come and who are followers of Yeshua. You can be in the church world or the Messianic Jewish world. Go to www.themessianicmatchmaker.com, themessianicmatchmaker.com. Simple. You sign up. There's a nominal registration fee just to cover expenses. We're not in it to make tons of cash. And let us get to know you. Let us help you. It doesn't matter what network you're part of. We want to help the children of Abraham find matches and reproduce so that our nation can continue, not just as a people, but also those who are in the kingdom of God through Yeshua. So that's the best way we can get to know you and help you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Rabbi Aaron, for joining us and for telling us about your wonderful ministry and the work you're doing. And we're excited to see how it impacts the community for the kingdom and all of the above.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. Well, thanks so much for having me. This was great. And thanks for giving us this big shout out.
All right. TheMessianicMatchmaker.com. Until next time, I'm Stephanie Hammond.
And I'm Jacob Franzak.
And this has been Messiah Podcast. Don't forget to follow us and share episodes with all your friends and family. Tune in next time. And until then, shalom.
Shalom.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Messiah Podcast, where Jesus is Jewish and that changes everything. This podcast is brought to you by First Fruits of Zion and is an extension of Messiah Magazine. Subscribe for free at messiahmagazine.org. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review along with a 5-star rating wherever you're listening now. Today's podcast was produced by myself, Stephanie Hammond, and co-hosted with Jacob Franzak. Our executive producer is Boaz Michael, and the editor-in-chief is Daniel Lancaster. This episode was directed and edited by Jeremy Schoenwald. Original music was written and performed by Joshua Aaron. The show notes for Messiah Podcast were edited by Candy Bishop and are available at messiahpodcast.org. If you're interested in learning more about the Bible from a Messianic Jewish perspective, check out Torah Club, which is an international network of small study groups who meet weekly to discuss the Bible together from a Messianic Jewish perspective. To start a club or join a club, go to